They promised you a future. It can be so incredibly hard to let go of the future that the avoidant promised you, the future that they talked about with you, the future that they made it seem like they wanted with you just as badly as you wanted it with them. They talked about the future pets you'd have together, the family you'd have, the houses you'd live in, the places you would go, the trips you would take. They talked about the future as if you were a sure thing, that you were going to be in it. And it really hooked you in. You really felt wanted by this person. You felt like you finally had it figured out. Your future was now clear. It was with them. You had found your person. And then out of nowhere, they are pulling that rug from under your feet, blindsiding you, telling you vague excuses like, I can't give you what you need. I'm just not ready for a relationship right now. Work is just too busy. Maybe if we met at a different time, right person, wrong time, and other vague excuses. And just like that, the future that you had pictured for yourself with this person is poof, it's gone. It's absolutely gone, out of nowhere, with no warning. And you're devastated. And it can be so incredibly hard to let go of that future that you were supposed to have. That is why future faking is so incredibly painful to have endured. During the moment, it feels real, but afterwards, it's earth-shattering. Now, when the avoidant is doing future faking, unlike a narcissist, they're not doing it for the purposes of hurting you. They're not promising you a future thinking that they can't give it to you. But the thing is, they are still completely unable and unwilling to provide that future once they get triggered. Early in the relationship with an avoidant, especially a dismissive avoidant or a fearful avoidant that leans heavily dismissive, early in the relationship, it is what's called the shared fantasy. It's a fantasy. It's not a real relationship. It's a romance novel, a fairy tale, a storybook. It's a movie. It feels great. The avoidant has not had their fears triggered yet. There's no real emotional intimacy. They don't really know you. They're getting to know you, which takes some serious time. There's no real commitment or real expectations, no real disagreements. They're feeling good. They're getting that external validation from you that they so desperately crave. The dopamine is flying high in their brain, dopamine being the feel-good hormone that goes off, and especially early in dating. So they're feeling good and they're letting all these bottled up emotions flow out onto you. And you're feeling good, you're feeling seen, wanted, heard, validated. And the avoidant actually thinks that they got it right. They think that you are their person and they have a future together with you. But due to a lack of self-awareness, because of a lack of self-reflection, they are unaware of their attachment wounds and unaware of why, when a relationship gets real, they get running. They're completely unaware of this. And if anything, they think it's their partner's fault that they feel the sudden urge to run away when things get more serious and when things get more real. Now, to understand this, go back to the childhood of this person. This is a person that received consistent childhood emotional neglect. Their emotional needs were not met. Yes, their basic needs, food, housing, clothing, those things were met, but their emotional needs were not. They often grew up in households where their parents didn't say, I love you. You don't talk about feelings. So they personalized this neglect, growing up to feel unlovable and defective. So they put walls up to protect themselves because their subconscious fear is if I let my wall down, I'll be exposed as not being good enough, as being worthless and defective. When emotional intimacy naturally builds in a relationship, especially when it's with a healthy, loving partner that truly actually shows up for them, that triggers them because intimacy is unsafe. Being close is unsafe. They learned this from childhood. They couldn't rely on anybody for their emotional needs, and the people they did rely on disappointed them, rejected them, perhaps even abandoned them. So their subconscious mind associates closeness with rejection and abandonment. So now the relationship is getting real. Perhaps there's even things like commitment, disagreements, or you have expectations on them. These are all extremely triggering to them. They feel they're not good enough. They fear that they can't meet expectations. They're going to get exposed as not being lovable. So they run for the hills, they shut down, deactivate, and completely detach from their emotions to protect themselves. This can result in a blindsiding discard where they're throwing you out as if you never even mattered because they're completely detached from their emotions. And they're not even able to feel empathy for the future that they promised you. They're not even able to feel empathy for the pain that you're in and the devastation and the shock because they're solely thinking of themselves and soothing their anxiety and concentrating on their feelings, wants, and needs in the moment. They're not able or willing to consider your feelings. They don't have the capacity. They could learn the capacity, but that's up to them. They'd have to want to do the healing work in order to get to that point. But the end result is a person that is not able to actually deliver the promises of the future that they made to you. They're not able or willing because they're not self-aware and not interested in doing the work. Now, they can get to that point where they're interested in doing the work, but that's up to them. No amount of begging, pleading, or convincing will change their mind. It'll only trigger them further, and they will continue to further shut down, push you away, perhaps ghost you altogether. But letting go of that future is an extremely painful and difficult thing to do. But recognize it's not because of you. It's not because of anything that you did wrong. It's not because of your worth. It's not because that you weren't good enough for them. It's quite the opposite. They felt not good enough for you. That closeness, the realness of the relationship triggered them. So they shut down, detached from their emotions, deactivated, pushed you away to protect themselves. And yes, they might be blaming you in their own mind, but that's to protect themselves from accountability, because accountability is deeply triggering for them because of their own insecurities. It's not because of you. So practice some self-compassion, stop blaming yourself, and recognize this would happen with any decent, loving person. It's not a reflection of you. They would do the same behavior with anybody. Anybody who is consistent, loving, affectionate, and emotionally available for them, they will eventually run from until they do the work and heal those deep attachment wounds.